Hey everybody, welcome to the GMG review. Today we're taking a look at the Silver Bayonet Egypt, Shadow of the Sphinx. I like that he put in a subtitle here. I didn't think of doing a subtitle for Canada. By Josephine McCullough, illustrated by Brainbug Designs, and published by Osprey, which they have kindly sent along as a complimentary review copy. So now this is a supplement for Silver Bayonet, the Napoleonic Gothic horror game that Joe penned for Osprey. And it contains all kinds of new stuff, so new soldiers. You also have new terrain type special rules like extreme temperatures, loose sands, the mummy's curse, and thirst. So a little bit of that survival horror stuff that I did in the frozen Arctic. He's doing in here in Egypt. And then several campaigns. Got a solo campaign of 3 scenarios with an epilogue, and then a 5-scenario Napoleonic Secret competitive campaign as well. New monsters in the bestiary, and of course a lovely introduction about Egypt and Joe's desire to move the Silver Bayonet around to different places you could have horror stories. I'm very excited about this because I don't own a Rick O'Connell miniature or a Rachel Weisz miniature, but I probably should. And I bet if I go to Crooked Dice, there's going to be one there. In fact, if there's a movie you've seen from, like, let's say 1965 to 2005, Crooked Dice probably has a miniature for it. So link me in the comments if you think you have a Rick O'Connell miniature, an appropriate Rick O'Connell miniature. I have a couple of Reaper miniatures I think that would probably work. Like I have an adventurer type, kind of like pulp dude that I think is a Werner Clock sculpt that would probably work as well. But yeah, this got real The Mummy vibes. I'm definitely going to be fighting against an Imhotep type in this one. So first of all, new recruitment lists for playing in Egypt, the new soldiers that you can have access to, and a new nation. So there's an Egyptian recruitment list. You can play as the Egyptian military, and they get access to artillerists, Bedouin raiders, champions of the faith, doctors, Egyptian conscripts, followers of the old gods, infantrymen, irregular janissaries, which are new as well, junior officers, light cavalrymen, Mameluke, a native scout, occultist, sailor, sapper, supernatural investigator, swordsman, and veteran hunter. So a big list. So first you have the Bedouin Raider, and these are the nomadic peoples that live in the deserts of North Africa. They have a cool special rule where they kind of ignore the temperatures, loose sand, and thirst special rules because they're just used to living in the desert. They know how to deal with this stuff, and they're smarter than the average person that's come along. Then we have our actual core stat line. They're basically a standard human stat line, so +1 melee and accuracy, 13 defense, and 10 health. They're 18 to recruit, and they come with Combat Rider, experience in the desert, which is their special rule, and then musket, cartridge box, and hand weapon. So cool for if you want to have sort of a force that mostly ignores the conditional stuff in the desert, but a little bit spendy for a base soldier. I can have conscripts. So these would often just be like the locals that are getting conscripted into fight. They're not great. They have hand weapons, and that's it. Speed 6, melee 0, accuracy 0, 11 defense, courage -2, health 10, and 4 to recruit. So they're very cheap. You can get quite a few. Followers of the old gods. These are the ones that would worship basically the old gods. But you can't have a champion of the faith in with them because they're worshiping the ancient Egyptian gods. They can use ancient spells that are also outlined in here. They're supernatural veterans with a hand weapon. Cost 20, regular human stat line outside of that. And then a Janissary. At one time, the Janissaries were the elite infantry of the Ottoman Empire, but they've since fallen on hard times. They can be found in backwater territories as sort of like soldiery or as mercenaries. They have sort of a standard human stat line again, but they come with fencing weapons. So having a musket, a cartridge box, and a fencing weapon means they use their skill die for damage, which is kind of neat. And then the Knight Hospitaller, which can be accessed by France, Spain, and Russia. They're a +2 melee, so a bit better at fighting in melee with 12 health. They're kind of an elite melee guy, but they have a holy symbol and a hand weapon, and they have medic as their core skill, which is cool. And then a Mameluke, they're elite warrior class and the de facto rulers of Egypt. While their martial abilities are second to none, their methods of warfare, especially their tactics, are somewhat dated. While they limit their effectiveness as an army, it can still make them extremely valuable allies to have as a specialist unit, where warriors' skills and instincts can be the deciding factor. So again, melee +2, accuracy +2, defense 13, courage 2, health 12, and recruitment 30. And they come armed to the gills. They get hand weapon or fencing weapon, pistol, cartridge box, and a musket. And they get Combat Rider. And then another skill that can be taken by an officer. So they just get a bonus skill on top of that. They're almost like a junior officer, but just better at fighting. And the rules make no distinction for horses and camels. If you have Combat Rider, they can ride with equal proficiency. Soldiers are assumed to ride whichever they deem better at the matter at hand. And this allows gamers to fight with any models that they wish. All right, so we got our terrain rules. Next thing you want to do is get some nice Egyptian flavored terrain. Think statues, obelisks, and bits of ruined temple. Thankfully, they're pretty much common amongst terrain manufacturers. Can be found in other odd places like aquarium stores. Thanks, Joe, for pointing that out. So extreme temperature, it can be hard to walk in extreme temperatures in the Egyptian desert, much less fight in them. To represent this, any figure that tries to sprint and rolls a 7 or less in their check takes a point of damage and potential heat stroke. Loose sand, it's very difficult to run on sand, especially when going to go uphill. To represent this, any figure attempting to sprint must roll a 13 or higher to move the extra 4. Anything less, they only move 2. Increase this to 15 if any part of the move would involve going up a sand dune. So when you're going up hills, basically, you try and sprint, it's a 15 plus to do it, otherwise just make your normal move. And then finally, the mummy's curse. Breaking into ancient tombs and tampering with millennia-old burials is not without its risk, the greatest of which is the mummy's curse. There are several ways a figure might become vulnerable to the mummy's curse, the most common is being damaged by a mummy, or a pharaonic mummy, or any other creature with the bestowed mummy's curse attribute, or to break open tombs, sarcophagi, or other containers. Basically, a lot of the scenarios are going to involve potentially this, and if you want to write your own scenarios, you have rules for it. Scenarios will specify if a figure must roll for the mummy's curse after a game. This is a simple check of TN9. Figures may only ever make one roll for the curse after each game, no matter how many times they were told they have to roll. However, for each additional time, they take a -1 to the roll. So if a figure is told 3 times during a scenario to roll for mummy's curse, they must make it at -2 modifier. The first one's unmodified. If you pass it, you're fine. If the check has failed, the curse has fallen on the figure, and they're -1 to all survival checks they're called upon to make. A figure that's already has a curse can receive it again after a subsequent scenario. In this case, increase the survival check to -1. So a figure that has a curse twice is -2. There's no way to lift a curse as far as the rules are concerned. It's possible that some powerful magic, like doing a service to the ancient gods or drinking from the Holy Grail, or being blessed by the Lady of the Lake, all things that might happen later on in one of Joe's campaigns, would lift the curse, but leave that for the players and the future games to decide. If they want to pursue this idea, it could form the central theme for a short campaign. So getting mummy cursed, basically, it gets progressively worse the more times it curses you until eventually you probably just die. It's kind of like a final destination rule from one of Joe's campaign books. And then finally, thirst. Soldiers need a lot of water when they carry marching and fighting in the desert. To represent this, whenever a specialist unit plays a scenario set in the desert that does not have access to a water source, such as a spring, river, or at least a large full barrel, then every figure in the unit will start the scenario with -1 health. And this is cumulative for each additional scenario. So if the unit plays 3 scenarios in the desert and never gains access to a source of water, their next scenario will be -3 health. It's possible, though extremely unlikely, that the members could die of thirst by playing 10 or more desert scenarios in a row. Which is, I like that it's that cruel. I like when Joe writes cruel rules. Any scenario should specify if it has a water source, which usually be obvious on the table. If this is the case, then one unit has left on the table, they hold the water source. So basically, if you drive off your opponent's considered to abandon the water source, so you don't get the -1 and they do at the end of the game, which makes holding the table very important. And then this is the competitive campaign. So 5 games competitive campaign. I'm going to go through like the core storyline, but I'm not going to do every mission because I don't want to spoil it for people. The secret cabals of mystics, arcanists, and occultists that aid your government in the war against the harvestmen have made an incredible discovery. They believe they've identified the exact moment of Napoleon's true ascension, the point at which everything shifted, where things began to turn his way with inexplicable luck and speed. It happened during the Egyptian campaign when he visited the Chamber of Wisdom far down in the Nile. No reason was ever given for this journey, and few aside from Bonaparte himself survived. What he found in the chamber remains a mystery, but solving that might be the key to bring down the ogre and robbing the harvestmen of their grimmest servant of death. So basically, you're trying to figure out what happened in that place, basically, that made Napoleon so powerful by fighting your way to the chamber against the other specialist units and discovering the secret for yourself. And then the Lost City is the solo campaign. During this Egyptian campaign, Napoleon sent a small detachment of soldiers to locate, investigate, and then garrison an ancient ruined city. No one knows what they were looking for or why. It's important to hold that place, and it has no strategic value. All that's known is that apart from a single messenger, no one ever returned. Hey, that sounds a lot like a certain movie. Hey, Benny, it looks like you're on the wrong side of the river. The Lost City is a 3-scenario campaign, and they all take place inside the ruined city. So, not saying I love that, but that's definitely going to get played relatively soon with a Rick O'Connell miniature. And then we've got our cool bestiary with crocodile rules, giant scorpions, mummies, pharaonic mummies, which means like a lord level mummy. This serpapard, it's a lion or leopard with a long snake-like head. A skeleton swarms Uraeus, it's a giant cobra. A viper, a were-jackal, which is someone who's got like I just can imagine a jackal man. And then a zombie camel, because every time Joe goes to the desert, he is obsessed with zombie camels. I don't know why. I just know that Across the Waste, which is his Rangers of Shadow Deep campaign, had zombie camels in it. So we have zombie camels. Someone locally to me made zombie camels because Joe invented them. There's always something in one of these campaigns, Joe, like a zombie camel. And then new attributes like Amphibious, Ancient Spells, which are like the ones that you can have your Champion of the Old Faith. So Control Creature, Flaming Weapons, creating a Viper basically. Bestow Mummy's Curse, some of the monsters have that. So for instance, the not the zombie camel, thank God, the most dangerous monster of all. But the Pharaonic Mummy obviously has it. The Mummy has it. Actually, the Mummy doesn't have it. Just the Pharaonic Mummy does. He might not have given it to too many monsters. The Crocodile doesn't have it. No, it's just the Pharaonic Mummy. But places will have it in the snares and stuff as well. And then we've got Combustible, so obviously the mummies can burn. Death Roll, which is what the Croc does to you. Leap, where they can jump. Max damage. It can't cause more than this amount of damage. So like small creatures might have a max damage stat because they're not big enough to hurt you. And then Poor Senses, they can only detect things from 10 inches or less away. Small, so again, little things. Submerge, so if you're more than 6 away from you and you're in water, you can't see it. Suppress Combustion, which keeps things from burning. And then Venomous for poison. And that's it. The Silver Bayonet Egypt. So I'm excited about this, man. I love these little supplements. Obviously, I love them enough that I wrote one for Canada. And I like the fact that you can play them head to head, which I'll probably do with like Jay or Christian. Or I can play them as, because I guarantee when Christian sees this, he'll be like, I got camels. I got zombie camels. I got all that. Christian has the most eclectic terrain collection. And then the solo campaign I'll just do myself because I have tons of desert terrain. I could make some were-jackals. We'll figure out what the bad guys are and figure out what was happening in the Lost City. I just got to get myself a Rick O'Connell miniature and a Benny miniature and a Rachel Weisz miniature and have my mummy action happen. So I'm pretty stoked. It's a very cool supplement. And again, it's that high adventure pulp sort of like adventure sort of like tone. I think he's captured really well in this. And yeah, and so we'll play through it. So big thanks for watching. We'll see you for more of the Silver Bayonet and GMG reviews in the future. Thanks for Osprey sending along the book for me to check out. Until next time, Ash, have a good night.